Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Joy Yamaguchi. I'm the Director of Public Programs at the Japanese American National Museum. So I have the pleasure on the behalf of the museum and Discover Nikkei in welcoming you to this program tonight. This is our fourth, I believe, right? Poetry, just Nikkei Uncovered poetry reading, and we're really excited to have you here. Just a few logistics before we get started. We welcome your participation throughout this program through the chat feature. Later on, we'll be able to invite you to join us asking some questions and interacting with your mic on. But if you're not speaking, we do ask that you keep your mic muted. If it goes unmuted while the poets are performing, we'll make sure that it gets turned off. So just keep an eye out for that. We also are recording the program today, so if you do not wish to be captured on recording, then you can just leave your camera off, and the recording will not feature your video. We are recording to post this on our YouTube channel later on. However, only the speakers and anyone who says anything on camera will be recorded in that recording. If you have any other technical issues throughout the program, please feel free to put it in the chat and you can message myself, or you'll see Marjorie and the Public Programs at Janum account. It's Elizabeth Morikawa there in the chat. And you can ask any of them for help throughout the program if anything comes up. We also have some of our other staff and wonderful folks on the call. So I also want to say huge thank you to Yoko Nishimura and Vicky Murakami-Tsuda and Grady Martin, who are our additional staff from Discover Nikkei who are on tonight. They really make all of this programming go. And Discover Nikkei, as you may know, is a project of the Japanese American National Museum and part of our, international initiative to make sure we're connecting and making sure people are connected around the world, which, as you may know, we launched today our Janum on the Go initiative, which is part of our museum physical building being closed and under renovation for about a year and a half. But we are still going to be putting on virtual programs like this and connecting with people, as we see in the chat, all around the world and all across the country and all across LA County and on and on. So we're really grateful to have you here. I believe that is it. We'll be putting chats and links and information in the chat throughout the program, so please make sure to stay engaged. If you want to turn your camera on so we can see you and the poets can see your reactions, we'd love that. We know that it's hard to perform to a Zoom room, so really grateful that you're joining us here tonight. So with that, I'll actually pass it over to our host tonight, especially since my dogs are barking. So I'm going to pass it over to the curator and the host of this program and all of our Nikkei Uncovered projects, Traci Kato-Kiriyama, who is an award-winning multi-inter and transdisciplinary artist and the author of Navigating Without Instruments, which if you haven't gotten a copy yet, you can get a copy from the Janum store or wherever you buy your books. But we're so grateful to work with Traci on this project and on so many. So thank you, Traci. I'll pass the evening over to you.
Thank you so much, Joy. I'm going to quickly change my personal view to gallery so I can see more faces. Welcome and thank you so much for joining. Thank you for making time on a Thursday night. We're, super thrilled to have three esteemed poets. I personally am a fan of all of them. And I want to start, though, I just really want to make sure that I thank Yoko and Vicky and Joy and Elizabeth and Grady and Marjorie, the team that really holds this down. The team nudging me always, we need the intro for this month's column. And, we've been doing this for a while now. So, I just want to make sure I say thanks to them. And I'd also like to briefly introduce the Discover Nikkei project and say a little bit more about the Nikkei Uncovered poetry column series. So Discover Nikkei is the Japanese American National Museum's international community-based web project with major funding from the Nippon Foundation, launched in 2005. They'll be celebrating the 20th anniversary of the website next year. The site is in 4 languages English, Japanese, Spanish, and Portuguese, and shares unique Nikkei stories from around the world, including the US, Brazil, Japan, Peru, Canada, Argentina, Mexico, and many other countries. New stories are published daily on the website. And we heard that something really new for Discover Nikkei, that they're on Instagram now. So check that out, follow that. Yeah, share it with folks. I hope that it will be like a regular portal for the ways in which we share the column every month. And yeah, so please check that out. So this series, Nikkei Uncovered, a poetry column, is a space for the Nikkei community to share stories through diverse writings on culture, history, and personal experience. The column features a wide variety of poetic form and subject matter with themes that include history, roots, identity, food as ritual, celebration and legacy, ritual and assumptions of tradition, place, location, community, love, and so on and so forth. I come from the philosophy that whatever our poets are writing, it is coming from a Nikkei perspective, um, and probably intersecting with many different identities that that poet holds and shares. So I love when we get whatever writing the poet that we want to feature gives to us, because it's what they are wanting to present to the world at that moment. And it's all Nikkei to me. In this monthly poetry column, we publish 1 to 2 poets on the third Thursday of each month, from senior to young writers new to poetry to published authors from around the country. And we've also had folks who are from different parts of the world as well. And we just really want to link the myriad differences and connected experiences. The column itself launched in December 2016. It's featured over 130 poets so far. We are in our 8th year of doing this. And I'm going to put it out into the universe. I was thinking today how cool it would be December of 2026 to have a 10th anniversary reading, something in person and then something virtual. So Joy, yet another thing I'm going to pitch to you. But I'm just going to put it out there because I was like, oh my gosh, 8 years. That's incredible. So tonight's exciting program of 3 wonderful poets, we're going to introduce them one at a time. So I'm going to introduce a poet. They're going to read for their set of about 14 minutes or so. And then I'll introduce the next poet and then the last poet. And then we're going to go into a little bit of a conversation. I have a couple questions to put out to them. But as you're listening to the reading, as you hear things that might stimulate a question, go ahead and put those into the chat. And our team is going to sort of keep track of questions that might be coming up. And we'll try to get to a couple of those at the end before we close the program. And then at the very end of the program, we will, make sure that the poets get a chance to put in the chat a really great way to get in touch with them, to buy their books, to book them, to do all the things. Okay. All right. Are we ready? Okay. So first up is a poet that I got to meet through a really essential space, a very important space here in Los Angeles, the Tia Chucha's bookstore and cultural center. Matthew Mejia is an American poet and an award-winning professor whose work and research explore trauma, fear, grief, epistemology, pedagogy, and the self. He is driven and inspired by his Japanese, Mexican, and Indigenous ancestry. Quote, "I am my ancestors' dream, and their bones are mine." Through art, he continues to heal generations of violence and abuse in order to unify his communities. In the classroom, he advocates for student success and truly believes that students are the foundation on which academia stands. Matthew began a 501c3 arts advocacy nonprofit, Nervous Ghost Press, with the fundamental idea that writing saves lives. All people deserve to experience the beauty and power of the arts, and he fights to illustrate that our voices carry power and strength. So, without further ado, thank you so much, Matthew Mejia.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. This is awesome. I haven't done a reading in a while, so it's kind of cool to be back at it. And so I'll start a little bit just introducing the press. So one of my big life projects these days is Nervous Ghost Press. In grad school, there was a lot of spaces that I was invited to or not invited to, excluded from because I was either the wrong something, and I'm sure a lot of us have been there. And in some conversations, people told me, well, then, start your own or create your own space. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do that. But it grew, more than that and bigger than that because it became a place for community. And it took me a while to figure out really what community meant. And I had a professor that would always ask me, Matt, what is your community? And I'm like, it's back home. What are you talking about? It's where my friends live. Like, that's my community. And he's like, no. What is your community? And I had no idea how to answer that question. I just couldn't figure it out. And then life happens, of course, as it does. And I realized, and this was up in Oakland, I realized I got to go. I have to go see my professors. I had to go see my classmates that were up there. And then I realized that community transcends anything and everything. And that at that moment, that was the community I needed. And then so now instead of community, it's communities, because all of us now are part of a community that maybe we weren't part of, but by being here together, we are. And a lot of my work deals with that. And currently, a lot of my work deals with ancestry because I'm curious about not just where we're from, but who we're from, the actual person. And it's weird. I've been thinking about it in, let's say, 30, 40 years, or even sometimes now. A lot of kids are going to look back and be able to see their parents at 20, 30, 15, whatever ages. And for a lot of people, you're kind of not supposed to. You're not supposed to see your mom when she was 25 in college being, going out and being crazy, or your dad or your older siblings. And it seems unnatural, but it's also super natural and interesting and cool. And so I look into a lot of ancestry things, and I tried to look at different perspectives. And when my perspective kind of started shifting was when my grandpa died. And then later on, even more so when my brother died. But I tried to look at how I'm dealing with grief, but also how my parents and my brothers, my cousins, my friends are dealing with my grief and how we're dealing with theirs. And it's okay for us to cry because they already did, and now it's our turn. And then in however many generations or years, it's going to be the next people's turns, and we get to be the strong ones because we already did it. And it was a weird kind of idea. But so I have a couple poems. I'll just kind of read through them. That way you don't hear me talk so much. And so this is Rung Trees. Stay where you are. Let me lay these flowers down. This is not your burden. I will carry the weight of these tears. You have your own. This is not your fight. But watch me. Yours will arrive either sooner or later, but you will have the strength. You will be the watchful. This handkerchief has wiped away the fears of your brothers and now yours. Through my eyes, I will wring it and nourish your roots. I will provide. I will keep you true. Let me bear these mountains, weather this pride. Yours is to live, mine is to die. Watch, learn from me my mistakes and my cries. Let yourself sleep and dream of bones. When you wake, rise, breathe. Find yourself a companion, beautiful as mine. Take your hands and with electricity, love. Follow my shadow. And when you feel the need to go, go. You will not break. You will not fail. You just will. And when the moment creeps beneath the guise of silence through the creaks of where I stood, it will be you, as I am now, looking down to those before, protecting those who will. Stand strong how I taught you. Pick a bouquet from our garden. Cradle the flowers in your hands as you were cradled in mine, then slowly, steadfast, and with ease, lay them over me. And I think a lot about these days too, about kind of anger and rage. And then maybe at some point I'll talk about just cultural rage. I'm sure everybody has a little bit someplace in that spot in us, you know. But I thought about how a lot of times those are our relatives or older relatives told us to be quiet, don't make any waves, don't make a scene, don't cause trouble. And these days I'm thinking, no, we got to start causing trouble. You know, use that rage for something good. Use that rage to be inspired and to fight. And so this poem is called Not Weak, Not Alone. It doesn't mean we're weak when we're alone. We carry their strength, pride, and with revolvers, we aim true. They ain't true walking behind picket fences with crowbars. Spat, spat, spat. If you show up empty handed, take off your damn shoes. It doesn't mean we're weak when we're alone. Our hopes are carried by their strength, and our shame is built from their pride. Spit on their graves. We're spitting images, imaginary barbed wire conjured up from nightmares, but it was real life, and so we carry. But we do not carry their resolve. We do not carry the silence. We do not carry the reservation save for what we decide to build. We're stronger when we're together, but that doesn't mean we're weak when we're alone. And I have this next one, and this next one's a little bit longer, and then the next one after that's a little bit longer. So they're going to be the ones that end it for me. I don't write a lot of politics. I don't think I'm a political writer, political artist, political anything. But as was mentioned earlier, every time we write something, by virtue of being alive in some way, there's politics, because for a lot of people, for a lot of us, we wouldn't be here if not for political reasons or for political reasons. And so just by speaking, just by existing, then it kind of comes out. And I've recently tried to steer into it. I used to try, I don't want to talk about that kind of stuff, but now I kind of want to talk about that stuff. And it's very powerful, it's very moving, it's interesting, but sometimes it can be heavy. And this poem is called Children of Violence. And it's the opener of my new book. Whenever someone out there wants to print it, you know, I'm selling it. Just kidding. But this is called Children of Violence. It causes loss. And God doesn't quite stop the bleeding, does it? Does it ever really change year and year and year out? Its inside is still the same. The street lights change and the stop signs still push. The over enthusiastic bullshit, the politician's wet dream isn't what's best for those who dream of something bigger. There's always something bigger to take away, to lose, to steal, to give to those who earn nothing but retribution. The pianist doesn't sing, yet music flows through keyholes, through doorways lit with the bones of mothers carrying infant hopes and love. Like cold sores and wounds, will you stop the fucking bleeding once? Please, it's too much. It's years and generations too late. It's dust at this point. They hoped and hoped and hoped and suffered through hope and still hoped, and yet victims were taught and raised to teach and raise more. It ends here. No more will pontification reign alongside fabricated royalty, and justice will no longer be the icing on the not your cake. You don't get any, it's for the chosen ones. The vegetables are perfectly fine for you. Build your bodies up nice and strong and do our bidding. Build our buildings. Raise these towers to cower under. Oh no, not today. These towers are mine. I can't climb alone, but I can play, and I'll play my way to the tippity top where you lay silent and decaying in sociopathic tendencies you thought were just yours. It's a free existence when change is nothing more than what's been oppressive, compulsive, disorderly conduct is what feeds us, what hunger is driven by, and what dreams are sustained with. My ancestors suffered through suffocating social experiments, and I am their bones, and their bones are mine, and their bones are mine. And their bones are what makes me, what calls me, what drives me. My bones live to break and build and scream and cry through bloodied up bodies, cold faces, cold skin doesn't stop the nightmares. It's time. If memories could, would you stand or be bombarded by historical bombshells that don't stop, fences that won't quit, My grandma's tears are steel and has steeled those who came after, who walked through the sunshine to remember their overcast birthplaces and homes, and through legislative deadbolts are nothing more than hopes and wishes, wishing to have something like what they lost. Gave up their hopes and dreams and children of violence to find peaceful conclusions of historical means of death. Will you stand and prove the meaning of their breath? Dance and sing along the endings fit for curses, or sit and face the smoke, wondering why. And I have two more. I think I'm at the limit almost. And so the next two, I'm in a lot of spaces these days with the press, and then with students, I'm talking to people, more people than I've ever thought I'd ever speak with in my entire life. And it's awesome, it's terrifying, but it's really cool. And hearing them and hearing different stories, and with the students anyway, I try to research their slang and all the things that are going on today, and it gives me a headache. It's so strange these days to be, to be nice. And oh, nice. And it's interesting where the words come from. I learned what Riz meant because of the word charisma, and I'm like, okay, I could understand that. That makes sense. But then there are some of them I just don't understand, and I'm always trying to find an answer. But it's also that mentality where I hear something about someone from a couple, generations ago, like I want to know why, and sometimes it doesn't. The answer is not there. But I'm like, oh, I want to know, and it just, if I don't get it in my head, then it just, just turns and turns and turns and turns, and I'm sure a lot of people understand that too. But so I listen to a lot of people, and I've been reading and trying to be part of different conversations, and I hear often some of the younger generations speaking negatively of the older generations. And sometimes it's, why did they let it happen? Why didn't they fight back? Why did they just stay silent? And all of these things. So I would have fought and whatever. But I thought about it, and I realized that a lot of times, if we say maybe we could have been the ones to speak up, yeah, because maybe we were raised by the ones who didn't, and they suffered so that we could have that strength, and they endured so that we can carry something heavier and stronger and better, and we can be the thing that they were hoping to exist. And so when I think about, on both sides of my existence, the atrocities that the ancestors faced, and not even that many generations ago, my grandparents, for example, that's just right there, that they faced, that you don't suffer through something and endure unless you think something bigger and better is on the horizon. And so then I started thinking about legacies, and what are they? And in movies and in books, the legacy is, a business, a company, money, all of these things. But then I'm like, wait a minute, it's me. It's my brothers and I. We're the legacy. It's us. It's our bones. And then everywhere that I walk nowadays, I know that my ancestors walked that same floor because it's my feet and their feet, and it's the same feet. And it's interesting, and it kind of really comforted me in this weird way, because I'm like, oh, we're not lonely. All of us at times think we're alone and so on. But it also made me think about being remembered, and then memory as something positive instead of negative. And so this poem is called "Why Remember Them in Fire." Feet move faster in the cold. In silence, fires aren't the way back. No smoke signals. Not this time. There wouldn't be anything left to destroy if not for gravestones built by generational hope. What's coming is something worth trauma, something worth nightmares. Coyotes follow the weak to bathe in the strength of walking through blisters and bare bones, bloodied with the someday it'll be all right. Someday. Not once will those dreams die, survived in blood and smiles and children's laughter. Let them be monsters and dragons in space. No need to breathe. There's enough. Why remember them in fire? The revolution has begun. Fill the mausoleums with the bodies of the damned and souls without redemption. Harvest thoughts and stack them tall. Nothing gets through. Nothing gets through. It is deserved. It is wanted and wanting. The street will run red with the streets. It's a message generations in the making for this moment beyond all else. What has been and will be is fool's gold, picked and mined with mindless advocation, born by and raised from lies. Why remember them in fire? The land is poisoned, waiting to be cultivated into anger, hatred, and the abandonment of visions of fortune, a platitude believed to be a destiny, legacy tainted with now, no longer is the longest term necessary. It's quick, and oh so quickly it is forgotten. The reason, the struggle, standing defiantly so against the sky, with hands only. Ought not stop, not yet. There's something more. Is it this? Hold with graces, with utter confusion and resolve. The wind carries what cannot be lifted, what will not be smothered, burns brighter than whatever pretense message painted on walls and in skulls. Sacrifices are not wasted. The edge creeps closer. The ruining of temptations of violence, with petty violins orchestrating a way home. Listen, controlled without purpose. Listen to the fallen leaves sing. Listen to the snow, crisp and cured. It is not over. An elemental detriment of hollowed out body with upside down eyes is not the future, not yet. It ends here, from these hands. Wounds healed by dust, and with what cause? Foot after foot held out, not gave up. And yet, and so why? Why remember them in fire? And just my last quick little tidbit here. When it was, this is as far as teaching goes, and just something about passions. And I'm always like, oh man, do I want to keep teaching? Do I not want to keep teaching? Do I want to write for a living? Do I want to go somewhere? And it's always the students in the community and spaces like this that remind me and prove how important sharing and speaking and engaging with others is. And so thank you again. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you so much. Share appreciations, your thoughts, your questions in the chat. You will be the watchful. You said that up at the top of your set. You will be the watchful. Thank you for your cultural rage, your sending down, your looking back and sending up. And that last piece, it was nice. I got to read alongside listening to you read it. And folks, we are recording this program. You can read more of Matthew's poems, and including that one, Why Remember Them in Fire, as one of the pieces that we featured in the Nikkei Uncovered poetry column. And we'll try to share that in the chat as well. So thank you so much. Appreciate you. And yeah, thank you so much for your reading. I wanted to quickly share a little bit of a poem from Amy Uematsu before we segue to the next poet. Amy was one of two, along with Hiroshi Kashiwagi. Amy was the first person that I asked if we could feature her poetry when we first started the column in December of 2016. We just commemorated in June her first anniversary of death. I can't imagine doing this column without Amy and voicing a little bit from her. So, still riffing on rice. 1. Preface. 25,000 bowls of steaming white rice. Old grandmother calling us home. 2. Habit. Issei, Nisei, Sansei, Yonsei. From picture brides to alien land laws, concentration camps, reparations. Through it all, we insist on that perfect bowl of rice. Tin pots giving way to one-button steamers, then high-tech cookers with automatic warming. A chawan of gohan any time of the day. Love Amy. Still riffing on Amy. Yeah, all right. Bringing Amy into this space. And I'm so excited to bring this next amazing poet into the virtual space right here. So Mia Ayumi Malhotra is the author of Mother Salt, forthcoming in 2025, and Isako Isako, California Book Award finalist and winner of the Nautilus Gold Award, Alice James Award, National Indie Excellence Award, and Maine Literary Award. Her chapbook, Notes from the Birth Year, won the Bateau Press Boom contest. How can you, I can't do that without making that sound. Anyways, Boom contest. And her work has been recognized internationally with the Hawker Prize for Southeast Asian Poetry and the Singapore Poetry Prize. She is a Kundiman Fellow and founding member of the Ruby SF, a gathering space for women and non-binary artists. Oh, I miss you. I'm so excited to bring you up. Mia Ayumi Malholtra, thank you so much. Take it away.
Thank you so much, TKK. You are the best. What an introduction. I am so grateful to be here. Matthew, thank you for your poems. I feel really humbled to share this space with the power of your voice and the voices that you bring here. And also, I'm still tearing up a little bit from hearing that that poem of Amy's. Yeah, I'm glad that her voice is here too. So I have a book coming out next year, and it's a book that sort of comes out of a lineage, I guess. My writing way back when was a lot about matrilineage. I've been drawn to write about the lives of my grandmothers, my aunts, my great-grandmothers, and as it came time for me to step into parenting myself, I just sort of felt the poems extending this line to me. So the next book is called Mother Salt, and it is indeed a lot about mothering. And so I think I'll just dive right in. I think maybe the poems sort of all blur into each other and don't need separate introductions, which maybe is a little bit how life feels when you're caring for very small people. But this is Mother Salt, and this is from the opening sequence of the book. Like an object from space, birth language is a sign of alien life. Mucus plug, meconium, also the language of newborns with its twisted syntax of sleepless nights and bleary milk-washed mornings, rooting, latch, fore and hind milk. For now, this private lexicon of flutter kick, swim, what feels like a heart tumbling through the body. Increasingly, I lose my breath, caught in the close room of pregnancy. I imagined you were a rag doll, a belle, a beautiful boy. I braced myself for the impact of bone breaking through and woke longing for you, the certainty of your head bobbing against my breast. The midwife slides the wand across my belly and your face swerves into view, an otherworldly blur of white on black, you dreaming in an amniotic sea. The image veers off screen and returns, eye sockets, rib cage. Strange that I have not thought until now of love. The heart, such a stubborn, cagey muscle. If I could just touch you, smell your unborn skin. They say the cervix is a sleeve-shaped muscle with a cuff or lip, that it thins, the word is effaces, then dilates like the pupil of an eye, taking the whole world in or letting it out. On form, with lines from the pillow book. I became a mother and I began to write like a Japanese woman, which is to say, I began to write like myself, from the imaginary whence my mother's mother and her mother before her came. Things that are distant, though near. Festivals celebrated near the palace, the zigzag path leading up to the temple of Kurama. When I became a mother, my lines began to grow less regular, less sculpted, and this itinerant prose did not adhere to shapeliness. Instead, it spilled from birth into death and questions of beauty, arranging itself as it wished, an artful yet imperfect text. And so I began to build strange, unkempt houses for my words to live in. Interior spaces without doors, only half-imagined windows, which opened to rooms where a person could wander, lost for days. It's no surprise this didn't happen earlier. In school, for instance, when a professor handed me a book of haiku. Deeply irritating things. A man who discusses all sorts of subjects at random as though he knew everything. Tell me about the form mothering takes on the page, why it accumulates so. Fragments, notes, a slow, painstaking assemblage. And I found myself heavy with the days, and my belly bulged with them, and the days accreted like lines. Things that give a clean feeling, an earthen cup, a metal bowl, the play of the light on water as one pours it into a vessel. Dear body, I want to tell you a story, but I don't know how to begin. I was afraid of saying no. I went in uninformed and inclined to please. I was concerned with doing birth correctly, whatever that meant. Push, push, the nurses shouting, the force of their insistence. Mostly I remember the glare of overhead lights. There was a doctor I had never seen. There was a battery of nurses and technicians whose faces and names I don't remember. There was at one point a midwife whose face I recognized, but then she was gone. The room flooded with strangers, a rush of surgical masks and gloves, and then somehow the baby. I heard a faint cry, like the high fluted voice of a bird. 2 notes, one slightly higher than the first, thin pitches rising, then falling. They placed her on my chest, and as I held her, pink and unblinking, I looked down and thought, what now? Nurses moved briskly around the room. They took her away, and suddenly it was very quiet. I wanted to be held, but there was no one, only the far-off sound of beeping monitors. I was afraid to leave the hospital. I had fallen so far out of my life, there appeared to be no way home. Each time she woke, fitful and whimpering, I was gripped by a new form of loss. On the morning of the 3rd day, I sat in a vinyl chair, arms washed in midwinter light. Tentatively, I touched her tiny, cuffed hands. She opened her eyes and yawned. We begin, and then we begin again. The first thing she did when the midwife set her on my chest was to pull toward my nipple, the tiny muscle working in her temple as she suckled, eyes gray and filmy from that other world. A hungry child, but not exceptionally so. disoriented. That's the word. Midday blurred to evening, followed by an endless milk-lit dawn. We seldom left the apartment, each hour marked by the clanking of the radiator, each whimper amplified 100-fold, the constant feeding, a tether of human need. When I did emerge, dazed, it was as though from a cocoon, organs dissolved into sticky fluid, a roaring in the ears. Dear body, for my second birth, I arrive in active labor, contractions barreling down my body. I refuse the stairs, I refuse the wheelchair, because the thing about stories is that they go on. In this way, writing and birth are iterative processes. We begin, and then we begin again. I am livid with birth, stumble stepping down the hallway, labor and delivery staff crowding me with clipboards and monitors. Ready for the epidural, a nurse keeps asking, and I refuse. Once, twice, 3 times. Also, I refuse the bed, the gown, the towels. I sink to my knees, wrapped by contractions so strong, it's a kind of dismemberment. The steely force of her body, each surge throwing itself headlong down the throat of the one that follows. It's her, the doula cries, and then the pushing, the constriction, and the inside-out burst of her body emerging from mine, the slippery, muscular force of a life spilling into the next, and the after pains, and the cramped, shuddery bladder, the heat of a world collapsing. Everything female in me has broken. I've come unmoored from the hours, crawl into pockets of time where there are none. The weeks disappear like a dropped stitch. The sun lifts its skirts and runs off with the days. I'm shot through with clotted milk. There's a demon in the ointment. Each night a broken bone, crookedly splinted into sleep. I scrabble after the hours. I watch as you surface from sleep's sticky layers, my breast swollen, tingling with milk. The miracle of multiplication, the more I give, the more I have. From fullness to fullness, from nothing, everything. At last, we have reached the end, which is not an end, but an interval. You breathe through the hours, little whispers in and out of new lungs. The crown of your head rung with light. Even now, your body bears the shape of the invisible world. My body, though no longer gestating, feels fuller than ever. Today, you saw a giraffe for the first time and said, "Giraffe, giraffe." Today, I said, "I love you, darling," and you said, "I love you, Fancy Nancy." Today, you put your hands on my cheeks and turned my face toward you. "Look at me, you said. "No biting." Today, you walked around the house patting a doll on the back saying, "That's okay, baby, that's okay." Today, you said your heart felt hopeful. Today, you said you wanted a pink cake with chocolate writing and strawberries for your birthday. Today, you said, "But my cake didn't have chocolate writing." And I said, "Well, at least it had strawberries." And I'll just read one more poem, which is the last one that appears in the book. And I just wanted to say, it means so much to me to bring this work into this space. I feel all of us sort of holding that new mother, um, and the ancestors holding that new mother, and it makes me feel so grateful. This last poem is called Instax, a new lyric. And it incorporates lines from Susan Sontag, Roland Barthes, and others. One winter, I bought my daughter an Instax camera. Through the lens, the magnolia tree in front of our house looked taller than in real life, its creamy whites and magentas more lovely. "This is so beautiful," she said, and pressed the shutter release. The room of the camera may have shrunk, but it retains in its name a reference to that magical space one originally occupied. Photographs show not the presence of the past, but the pastness of the present. Is it possible for an image to be an elegy, for a photograph as it captures the light of a lost moment to be anything but? The more interesting abrasions are not of stone, but of flesh. Through photographs, we follow in the most intimate, troubling way the reality of how people age. One day she will say, "I can't believe how young you were. Looking at me now, you would not know I was once a small child in overalls with blue yarn in my hair." The smearing effect of time, memory, distance, and sun exposure. One day I will look and see that she is no longer a baby, and from the vantage of the future, our lives will appear no more than a shedding of cells through the years. While pregnant, I became obsessed with the passage of time. Something about the marks it made on my skin as it stretched past. A sort of umbilical cord links the body of the photographed thing to my gaze. Light is here, a carnal medium, a skin I share with anyone who has been photographed. What I remember about my own mother: some days I returned from school and the floors gleamed. A figure who came and went, ornamenting the fringes. Once I left a pair of scissors open on the floor and she cut her foot, trailing blood to the bathroom. How it feels as the frame that holds your life falls to pieces. One day I will forget how high the ceilings were, how the exposed beams collected shadows which drifted across the walls in complex, shifting prisms. We live in the presence of another world, faces lit from the inside. "Look, Mama," she says, pressing the viewfinder to her eye. Her fingers find the shutter button and the world explodes in a flash. Bodies bleached by sun, faces haloed in gauzy light. How joy effervesces and what is lost in the glow. Thank you so much.
Woo! Yes, yes. At the end of all the readings, I'm definitely going to ask everyone to unmute to show the appreciation, but put it in the chat. Mia, so wonderful. Always. I was writing down all kinds of lines. Unkempt houses for my words to live in. I will take any form of any house you build for your words at any time. Thank you so much. As a person who writes about being in the gray area of never deciding to have a child, and you and I've talked about this, and your words hit me in just such a particular way, and it's beautifully painful. It's painfully awesome, and so I thank you so much for all your work always, and I can't wait for your book to come out next year. Let's keep putting out there. 10th anniversary, we're going to do a big thing, have all of you back. And yes, today was the release of the monthly column, and Mia's pieces, some of her pieces are on there, so please check that out. we got to feature Matthew and Mia and Christine throughout this year. And so excited now to bring on our final poet for the evening. Christine, so excited to have you here. Thank you so much. We started in LA, we moved up to the Bay, and now we're going all the way across the country to New York, to the East Coast. Thank you very, very much for being up this late. Yeah, I mean, we're talking like a 10 p.m. reading, which is my favorite kind of thing. Truly, truly, late night, late night. So Christine Kitano is the author of the poetry collections Birds of Paradise by Lynx House Press and Sky Country, Boa Editions, which won the Central New York Book Award and was a finalist for the Patterson Poetry Prize. Her chapbook, Dumb Luck and Other Poems by Texas Review Press, won the Robert Phillips Poetry Chapbook Prize. She is co-editor of They Rise Like a Wave, Blue Oak Press, which is an anthology of Asian American women and non-binary poets. She is an associate professor in the Lichtenstein Center at Stony Brook University and also serves on the poetry faculty for the MFA program for writers at Warren Wilson College. We're so lucky and honored to have you here, Christine.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me and for having me here. Matthew, it was so great to hear your work. I don't know your work, but I'm so glad to be introduced to you. And Mia, I have always admired your work, and these new poems are completely, I have no words. They're so good. They're so amazing, and I can't wait for your book. One of the fun things about poetry readings, I guess, is especially when you go last, is that you kind of change what you want to read because of what other people have read, and that has happened to me. Especially after Mia's poems about the body, I'll say. I have some body poems as well, so I think I'll read some of those. I'm reading from my chapbook, Dumb Luck and Other Poems, which came out earlier this year. And I think the other thing I'm thinking about is how much I think about Los Angeles as part of my identity, especially because I no longer live there. In fact, I've lived outside of California longer than I lived inside of California. I think I'm at that point now. But when Matthew's talking about these different communities that we're part of, I think LA, Southern California, Japanese American, all of that is still very much connected for me. A lot of it has to do with living in places, remote places like upstate New York, where I was often the only Asian American person around. So I'll start with a poem called To California, because it's a California poem for you all. And opens with a line from the poem To Florida by Jessica Jacobs. To California. 1. Los Angeles, California, 2001. In the citrus light of winter, I walked barefoot on your gray shore. The wet sand packed hard as concrete. My footsteps make no imprint. December, I should be in algebra, but have ditched again to walk the boardwalk through a hall of abandoned carnival games. Plastic bags cinched around the necks of gruesome-eyed teddy bears. And the roar of the water, I'm sure, will one day swallow my father's ashes, the house I live in, my small inheritance dissolving like a cube of sugar on a hot tongue. 2. Syracuse, New York, 2008. I step into my first winter wearing boots that trap my ankles like casts, sleep with the sheet pulled up like a mask to warm the air I breathe. A spear of ice threatens from the overhang above our third-story window, hardening, not sharpening until spring. And still, when I think of cold, the coldest I've ever been, it's you, I remember, California, 50-something degrees, and I'm 16, standing barefoot in the December ocean, palm trees dropping brown fronds the size of surfboards. My father alive for another year, though I don't know this then, though how did I not know? The water churning around my ankles, turning my body to stone. 3. Ithaca, New York, 2021. In a book I'm reading, the author states we each carry a province within ourselves, a place we can never leave. California, I never wanted you because I knew you never wanted me. Never the girl in the postcards, sun ablaze like spun candy, sugar melting down her golden shoulders. No, invisible local, unsmiling daughter of the immigrant, of the displaced, daughter of the dead and dying. But where else can I stake my claim? Over a dozen years gone, now an expert at shoveling snow, a master of the hunched ice walk, but still surprised by seasons, still holding out a gloved palm for the first snow. And in that province, nestled inside, still 16, still walking that gray beach alone. I'll read another poem that takes place in California. So for many years, I was teaching at Ithaca College in upstate New York, and I was teaching a lot of first-year college students, and a lot of them were asking me what I remembered about my first year in college. And so this is a true story, and it's a story that I remembered because of them asking. And it's one of those poems or stories I read and I think about how young I was at 18 and how young they are and how vulnerable I think we all seem at that age. The possum. It was spring, late semester, the California air thick with jasmine, eucalyptus, a ripe, fragrant heat you could almost see. 19, and though I didn't know it then, still in a winter of mourning, though who doesn't grieve at 19, after enough of childhood's petty injuries, already a lifetime's worth of disappointments. And I couldn't name it then, but it was a breed of this grief that wrenched me awake each night, my body a breathless, pure pulse. And so it was, near 20 years ago, I answered the midnight phone call from a boyfriend who was sobbing. I killed a possum, he said. Will you come see? Already awake, I agreed. In his car, I asked what had happened. He said he had run over a possum on the way back from McDonald's on a side road off Canyon Crest. He wanted to drive by again for me to check if it were really dead, still dead. We drove the mile or so in silence, and darkness pressed in on all sides, no visible moon or streetlights. It was somewhere here, he said, slowing the car to a stop. Can you look, please? I didn't know what I was looking for, but I stuck my head out the window he had already rolled down on my side. Up ahead, I saw what might be a flash of white and said so. That's it, he said, and inched us closer. I unbuckled my seatbelt, tucked my bare feet under my knees, the better to lean out. And when I did, it was as if a curtain rose on cue. The trees parted and the moon swiveled its spotlight to illuminate the possum's smashed face, half gravel, half flesh, one shoe button eye trained on me, its triangle mouth agape, as if mid-scream. I screamed too, and my boyfriend wailed, a pitiful, heartbroken sound that swelled not empathy, but rage, like a fever through my 100-pound body. The glowing animal's broken face, just another in a line of the slightest disasters, a face I would have further broken, smashed, then flung back at the utterly indifferent houses. Instead, I balled a burger wrapper in my fist and tossed it out the window, said only, "Let's go." The boy was crying, and I hated him then. Such innocence, such weakness, the otherwise ease with which I imagined he would navigate the rest of his simple, milk-sweet life, unable to own the most minor mistakes. And me, I carry that possum with me, like the body of the girl I was, the girl I was leaving behind. That moonlit face I can still see when I close my eyes. I think I'll read two more poems. So this one is called Ligature, and I was thinking about this, as Mia was reading. I think maybe people of a certain age have these things on their mind, even if we may come at it from different perspectives. So this is called Ligature. After years of knowing its meaning, I encounter the word out of expected context and must look up the definition, one I know I learned early studying music. Ligature, a mark to indicate notes that belong together, a phrasal unit. Now I read the word and think binding. Picture the figure 8 cuffs around a person's wrists, or on a crime show, the red circling the victim's neck. I think then of the word frenulum, a misstep in my synapses, but my tongue demands I now pronounce its syllables, frenulum, the sounds like small hills rolling. Frenulum, a fold of skin that limits movement in the human body found on the penis, in the clitoris, and under the tongue, are natural instruments of pleasure and pain. My mother once told me about a Korean father who slit his American son's frenulum to ensure full lingual movement for unmarred English speech. No mistaking L for R, saying loyal instead of royal, regal, not legal. Fearing my own tongue cut, I practiced pronunciation the way I practiced piano, in private, the obsessive rigor of learning the right way to alight on language. Puberty came early at 10, each month bringing its stabbing pains, blood that soaked through my underwear as I sat on the wooden bench running Hanon scales, chords and arpeggios, the webbing between my fingers near splitting. And so the word circumcision comes to mind, how pain by design must numb memory. I quit piano soon after. Of all I could have inherited, I settled on a willful indifference, a desire to be simplified. Is it regret or contentment I now feel, driving through falling leaves to yoga class, where my teacher returns from maternity leave, baby in tow? She describes the birth as spinal labor, a pain she knows she felt but now cannot find words for, or maybe can't remember. 27 hours of labor, an unreasonable, unfathomable fact, beyond language, beyond memory, beyond sacrifice, all of which conjures in me shame and relief. The other women nod sympathetically, and there's a small piercing in my left abdomen, another egg beginning its monthly descent. My teacher smiles and sips tea. She's come out on the other side. In a circle of sunlight, the baby dozes and wakes, waves mitten fists, blinks, giggles, babbles, and sticks out an intact pink tongue. All right, so I'll read one more poem. Let's see. All right, I'll read this poem. It's called Faith. Alone in the window on its single stem, the orchid's first bloom has begun to droop. One petal flapped at an odd angle, like a dog's ear inside out. I press my thumb to the soil, still damp from last week's watering. We've had no sun this week, the last week of August, just rain and rain, the sky spilling open every evening as if gashed. The remaining blooms still gush violet. Each petal constitutes a delicate webbed integrity, not unlike fish gills, I imagine, plump and breath swollen. When I pinch one, it gives like velvet. 1st of September tomorrow, and rent comes due. The orchid was a gift, and though I could buy another if I so wanted, this is the one I must keep alive. This doomed stem that I've pinned upright, my one small act of care with a binder clip. Rent is due, and once again, in this land of bounty, salaried paycheck, retirement plan, health savings account, we thread the needle. I try to refold the drooping bloom, to turn the petals right side out, but I've twisted too hard. The entire head drops off in my palm. A podcast host instructs me not to worry. Money is a river, she intones. It flows both toward and away from me. I repeat this like a mantra as I sign the check. I know I am luckier than most. Next to the orchid, the scallion stumps, which I've sunk in a coffee mug of tepid water, shed their paper skins. And by luck, I mean I have seen enough effects for the causes I enact, have taken the extra job to ensure that water indeed flows toward me before it flows away. Still, the truly faithful deserve their reward. As do I hope, hoarding pennies for a mortgage, dipping the tea bag until the water runs clear. All the while, I'm saying yes when I should be saying no, and no when I should be saying yes. All the while, flowers are wilting in my clenched fists. All the while, the scallion's slender membranes are sealing themselves shut, their split selves unifying, reseaming, like magic, like faith, almost before my eyes. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Christine Kitano, folks. Christine, I had to write down the unsmiling daughter of the immigrant, of the displaced, of the dead and dying, but where else can I stake my claim? You're staking it here. You're doing it right now. Thank you so much for all of your work, all of your words. I'm going to invite all of you to unmute, snap, clap, give a woo. Let's hear, you know, because we're virtual, but we are still human and alive and existing in spaces in different parts of the country, enjoying poetry on a Thursday night. So love to hear. Yes, thank you so much to Christine Kitano, Matthew Mejia, Mia Ayumi Malholtra. Fun fact, when I review, you know, the pieces, when we ask folks to send us some of their work to feature, I try to read while I'm having a meal, and a lot of times it's out in the community, and I always have this moment where I'm like reading your pieces. I've had this moment with each of you, and I'm reading and I'm eating and I'm so much joy, and I'm looking around like I'm so lucky that I get to be reading this work right now, as I am just enjoying my meal in this open space. And I'm like, y'all don't even know. All of you people sitting around me. So thank you for letting us share your work out with the Discover Nikkei network of people around the world, literally. I hope you'll keep sending us more poems for us to feature. I love that I got to read along to California and Possum when you were reading those. And I had that moment with everyone on Forum and Why Remember Them in Fire. So folks, you can all check out their work through many ways. I'm going to ask the poets to each put in the chat a way that you can reach out to them on Instagram, through their websites, or ways to buy their books. Or to get them published. And we're going to just ask a couple questions of our really lovely guests here. So something that the team, is always interested in, being this is a poetry column literally called Nikkei Uncovered, a poetry column. So would love to hear from each of you. What is that for you, sort of being specifically in a Nikkei poetic space? It's a unique one. And it can be odd. It can be wonderful. It can be all kinds of things. So just, I would love to pitch it out to y'all. Anyone can start.
Something I thought about as far as this particular space is, like you said, it's rare. It's oftentimes when I'm in class and I see a student that has a Japanese sounding name, I'm like, oh my gosh, this never happens. It's so weird. And growing up, because I'm mixed, and I think a lot of people are mixed too, it's something we don't really articulate so often as kids, that we're maybe not enough of this one, but not enough of that one. And so that when spaces exist, that we can be as much of something as we are, especially now, then it's cool. And you get to read work, and as a poetic space and an artistic space, you can read work that hits on these things that maybe we don't really think about just because it's there since we're born. And then you go, oh my gosh, I know exactly what they're talking about. That's awesome. And so, for example, where we last saw each other at Tio Chicho's with Rodriguez, when I read his book, was the first time I ever read a book, and I go, hey, I know that street. And it meant something because I knew the street. I knew Rudy. I don't know. I have my own Rudy. I think everybody has a Rudy, but I knew who and where that was. And so spaces like this, we can engage with people, and it's like we are part of an extended family, because I think we are, and it's really nice, and I think it's beneficial and effective, and it's healing, which is always good.
Thank you, Matthew. Absolutely.
I love that so much. I love that you touched on family and place, and I don't get to experience this kind of space very often. So it's a really unique gift, I think, when the thing that often is, I don't know, the thing that makes me different than other folks in a room, when that thing is actually the thing that brings me in, and gives me a sense of belonging, that does feel healing. And it feels really freeing as well. Like, I sort of feel like, gosh, I can write what I want to. I can have confidence in sort of my, I don't know, my intuitive sense that this is what I want to pursue. This is what I want to go into, because there is a home like this, or a family like this, where, I belong and I'm a part of something. It just, it means a lot to me.
Thank you, Mia.
So I think because Nikkei is not a term that I really grew up using, it has become now a place that I feel like is my present and my future, whereas terms like Japanese American feel like, oh, that's what I thought I was when I was younger. I grew up Japanese American, Korean American, and as Matthew was saying, you always feel like you're not the one that you're supposed to be at the right time. Whereas I always I think I first heard the term Nikkei when I was in college, and I appreciated how broad it was and how just welcoming. It did not feel like a really narrow category. And I felt like, oh, I can be Nikkei. Like I don't have to explain anything. That's fine. And so, yeah, I like that term because I feel like you make it what it is. You are part of that community and you don't really have to justify how or why.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank all of you for those answers. That sharing, because I grapple sometimes with all of these terms, like when people are like, "What are you?" Right? And I do like to say Nikkei because it's this like diaspora sort of term, and I think it can be more inclusive. Um, and at the same time, a lot of people don't know what that means. So if I say Nikkei to someone who's not non-Nikkei, I end up having to sort of explain that. But I kind of like that. I think it's like almost like this storytelling exercise, right? But yeah, I think it's really interesting. All of you share multiple heritages and ethnic identities. So yeah, just appreciate like whatever it is that you want to bring into your poetry and however you identify through those things. I want to also encourage folks, if anyone has a question, to please put it in the chat. I think I am actually already seeing one. Let me take a look. Yeah, let's go there, and then I'll close with one more question that I have for all of you. To all the poets, where do you find inspiration for your writing, and how does it shape the themes or ideas in your poetry? That's from Jonathan. So yeah, where do you find inspiration, and yeah, how does it shape you and your ideas for your poetry? Where are you at in 2024? Inspiration. Can I ask Christine to start?
Sure. I think everything I write about is because I've read something that made me want to respond to it. That's a really broad answer, but I feel like the reason I write is to be in conversation with everyone else who is writing and who has written before me. And so I think that's where I find my inspiration. I find like I want to say something too.
Yeah. Inspiration from reading things.
I get inspired by a bunch of stuff, and I have a poem about trees because I was staring out the window one day and all the trees that I was looking at were the same height, and I didn't know why that happened, and it made me curious as to how does a tree know when to stop? It just stops growing, but all at the same height, and then it turned into this poem about how do trees know when to stop, and yet I can't, and I just keep trying to do better and better and better, and it's horribly heartbreaking because it's always trying to do something like just stop one day and just say, hey, I think I'm tall enough, or I did enough that day. But it was funny because I just looked out the window, and I think inspiration can come from anywhere, and also to just like Christine said, to just speak and to have our voice and just say, this is my voice, I'm gonna talk about it, and we're gonna have a conversation, and let's go.
I think I have kind of the same answer as both of you, in that I'm inspired by things that sort of pique my curiosity, things that I don't understand, but want to understand, and also things that I feel like I want to be in conversation about, whether it's with another poet or a visual artist, or a composer. The work that is live for me right now. So the manuscript I'm sort of in process with is a book about music and the interior life. And so I've found myself chasing all of these questions, unanswerable, most of them, and curiosities into worlds that I'm sort of an outsider to. But I think it's maybe that, like, I don't know if it's the little kid in me that just wants to know more, or if it's the researcher that wants to, get to the bottom of this response that I feel in myself. But I follow my intuition a lot. I think maybe my intuition is my wisest thing. And I don't know. I just try and get out of the way, because I can usually feel a little itch when I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. I have to look at this more closely.
Yeah, the material is all around us all the time, right? And we project into trees, we project into our curiosities, the things that we are already wanting to find and explore and have conversations with. I feel that way too. It's like what do I want to have more conversations about? If I present this piece in 3 minutes, it's probably going to lead to a host of conversations with people that I know and don't know, right? So yeah, it's really all around us, and I think that's why I love this forum. I love our forum. I love poetry. The short form allows us to dive into several things at once, several songs at once, probably, right? Let me pick up one more question from the chat. So let's see. From Iris. Earlier, we were treated to hearing the late and wonderful Amy Uematsu's words being brought into the room. It made me think of how a lot of us have literary voices whose work dwells in the room with our process, our poems as they come into being as well. Who are some of the voices that you found yourselves dwelling alongside as you wrote? Great question. Thank you, Iris. And thank you, Jonathan, too. Nia, you want to start with this one?
Sure. Yeah, I'm just trying to think back, since I read from Mother Salt. I'm trying to think, like, who was in the room with me when I was writing those poems. I think they're writers like Rachel Zucker and Sarah Manguso. I really craved, sort of in the period of time when I was working on those birth poems, I craved stories written by folks who had given birth. Sherry Moraga has an amazing memoir that I remember just sort of, I was just grabbing for anything. I think, let's see, there's a book called Little Labors that I read, these little vignettes. And I think also as I carried on with discovering the shape, the form of the project I was trying to put together, there were like these old ancestral voices that started coming into the room also. Poets like Basho and Kenko, and I read a little bit from Sei Shonagon, the pillow book as well. I started realizing that this like kind of miscellany prose where the narrative comes together in little fragments, where it's wandering, that there's such deep literary precedent for someone like me, like all of us, to draw from, that this is a part of our Nikkei inheritance. And so I think I learned to honor those voices and that impulse that I had within.
And can I also say, you said it even in your poem, when you became a mother, you started to write like a Japanese woman, which is to say, I started to write like myself. So it's your voices as well, right? So yeah, so many. The literary, of course, is in the question, but there's so many voices. I love that. Matthew, what about you?
These days, it's it seems like it's my brother, my grandparents, other people, my friends, but the biggest voice is when I was a kid, because I didn't talk. I didn't talk and I didn't read, and it was horrible, and I cried a lot in school, like under tables and things. And so that person never spoke. And so when I'm writing, it's kind of like I'm writing words now as me, and then there's this weird trail of little kid writing. I'm like, shut up, get out of here. But I carry that a lot. And then I don't have a lot of back then. I didn't read a lot of books or anything. I really read and fully comprehended. I think my first novel in college, and everything else was I would go like this and just pretend to read so I wouldn't get in trouble. It was kind of funny. Well, funny now, but so that's who it is. I carry a lot of just past experiences, my friends and people.
Um, yeah, I think that I carry literary voices, certainly. I was looking through the chat. There, a poet that I love is Natasha Trethewey, and I'm getting ready for the semester, and I'm teaching a class on her work. And uh, I I always want to write like her. I'm always trying to write like her. And in a more personal way, I think for the poems that are in Dumb Luck, I was trying to write like a different version of myself, like a more adult version of myself. I always feel like I'm writing about the past and I'm writing about childhood. And even if the subject matter is the same, I think I was trying to find a more present day version who was telling these stories. So I was trying to think about even maybe writing into the future in some ways, like what voice is that?
Excited to hear what comes from that. What's next for you as well? Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you again for those questions. They're always really rich. And I know you could probably speak for an hour, right? Like on, when we start going in on the people that we love to read, my goodness, I mean, we're surrounded. Um, so last question I have, I'm curious, for all of you, I know we all have a number of colleagues and friends who published books during the early days of the pandemic and lockdowns and things like that, and even beyond pandemic and virtual versus in person. Would love to hear from all of you, like what is your relationship these days in terms of what is your relationship with getting your work out there? What is your relationship with connecting your words to your various communities? What are some lessons learned, perhaps, or things that you're practicing within the past year as there's emergence into more things in person, but there's still obviously things that are needing to be virtual, or that we've learned can be beneficially virtual, like this. Yeah, so it's a pretty broad, big question, but yeah, would love to hear how you're feeling about how you're connecting your work to communities.
One of one of the ways I'm connecting these days is events like this one, and then trying to go to in-person open mics or reading events and signings and other things. And then also we have the good and the bad of social media, because you can communicate with people that you would have otherwise never met, and find similar interests and ask them what they're doing. Who are you sending it to? And my former classmates and I sometimes will hop on a Zoom or a phone call and list together places where we can submit work, or who's accepting work, or whatever we're doing. And and I host open mics every month, and so that's a big one. Even though it's tiring and I'm always stressed out about it, but during the event it's amazing, and then for the rest of the month it's horrible, and then it's amazing again, and then it's horrible. But it's worth it, absolutely, to be able to meet new people who are either part of the community but never show up, or are just complete strangers to everything, and then they walk by that one day in that bookstore or that brewery or whatever it is. Maybe they've had the perfect amount of beer that day, and they just go, "Hey, I got something to say," and now they're there every single day and always. And with the virtual spaces, when COVID began, everything, everything was virtual, and I kind of got tired of the virtual stuff. I wanted to see people's faces and their legs and whatever else and feel the energy in the room. But then after everything went in person, we kind of forgot about the virtual stuff. And so the big lesson I learned was that to try and have both. And so I've tried to have events where we would have a virtual person, but then it's very difficult to have the in-person audience listen to the virtual person and have them listen to them, but then also the people inside have to hear each other and the wires get crossed. But it's possible. I've done it once, because what I've realized is that virtually we could have events with people 3,000 miles away from other countries and in different languages, and it's really nice. It's a very cool way to bring everyone together, but it's also difficult and stressful, but it's fun.
Yeah, that's you're a hard working connector. It sounds like you're presenting all the time and working on things. But yeah, I appreciate the hybrid for sure. That's always necessary.
Well, I'll say I am not a hardworking connector. I think my response to the pandemic a little bit was I just sort of disappeared into the life of my family, my notebook, my own private work. And let's see, I did publish a chapbook during sort of the last few years of whatever the beginning of lockdown was. And I mean, I did that virtually. I had little book bundles that people could buy, and I included packets of tea. And for the virtual event, I invited everyone to brew their tea together, and we all, sort of shared space in that way. But it was a strange experience, and yeah, teaching was online. And I think in this most recent season, as I'm thinking, about what it means to reemerge, I've realized social media exists. I can re-engage. In-person teaching does exist. I'll be teaching my first in-person class this winter, which is kind of a delight to think about. So I was able to do one brief workshop with people in a shared physical space, and I forgot how good that is. It's just been talking heads on a screen for so long. So I'm negotiating all of those questions. They're very live to me.
Yeah, it's such a mix, right? It's like there's so many great, wonderful things about the virtual access. And then when you do something in person, it is sort of like, oh, yeah. Christine, want to close us out?
Sure. I am also not a good networker or collaborator. I also tend to just disappear into my own work. But one thing I did learn during lockdown was that I really like going to online readings. I like going to Zoom readings. I like being able to, keep my camera off and just listen into people talking. And I found that to be a really productive space. And that's not something I would have known before. I would have thought, oh, I only want to go to in person. But I think there are things that happen in Zoom spaces that can be really, really interesting and really useful for people. And it also makes you appreciate what the energy of an in-person event as well.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of the great things that we're going to keep literally. There's no reason to stop virtual, which is exactly why we can have all of you in the space. We don't have exorbitant huge budgets to fly everybody out, right? And then there's time is always an issue, right? So yeah, thank you so much. Again, everybody, thank you for joining us this evening. Want to encourage everybody to please follow, support, purchase the books from all of these wonderful writers, and stay connected with us at Nikkei Uncovered. if you have a poem or two that you would like to submit, let us know through the Nikkei, the Discover Nikkei Instagram. That'll be a really good way to engage with us. So I just want to say again to Christine and Matthew and Mia, thank you for making the time. Thank you for the work. It's so much labor to write. It takes a lot, and it takes even more to share it. So really appreciate all of you so much. Appreciate and love your work. And yeah, Joy, do you want to come back on and give the last sort of Janum goodbye?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Again, I hope everyone is, put in the chat, give your reactions, your round of applause. Thank you so much. Matthew and Mia, Christine, and of course Tracy. I saw some people having to go turn their lights on and stuff, and I had to as well. So it's been a lovely way to kind of transition and end the day today. So I really appreciate it. As just a couple quick plugs, Discover Nikkei has a Nikkei name series. So if you have something you want to write about your name, about the story behind it, we have a submission page for that. We're also accepting videos where you can pass a plate of food along, and we'll compile them all together as a project for Discover Nikkei. So it's really easy way to share your favorite food. We know that food connects. We heard some food tonight, and pass it along. So and we have one more. We have another program on November 12th with our Nima Voices with Graciela Nakaji, who is a Peruvian Nisei person, and that's been our online series, speaking of virtual programs, where we've been able to do programs in English, Japanese, Spanish, and Portuguese, as reflecting our website and the languages of the Nikkei diaspora. So really, that program will be in Spanish, but we hope that you still join us, and yeah, support Discover Nikkei, support Janum, and support these poets, please. I think we'll just leave the call open so folks can chat, say hi. I know there's some family and friends in the crowd, and then we'll close up for the night. But thank you so much, and we'll see you all next time. Please stay in touch.